Just after dawn, January 17th, 1991, Gulf War explodes over the Iraqi skies. Lieutenant Commander Mark Fox, callsign Mert, launches from the USS Saratoga in his F-A-18C Hornet. Sunliner 401, or callsign Quicksand 64. Now, the Navy does things a little bit different when it comes to names and call signs, but that's neither here nor there. Today we're talking about Mark Fox, callsign Mert, and his aerial victory on January 17th, 1991. His mission is to be the spare aircraft for that day. Should he step into the formation, now his objective will be to pound the Iraqi airfield H-3, which is a keynote in Iraq's defense posture. But as war goes, chaos will quickly thrust him into a duel and etch his name into aviation history. August 1990, Iraq's tanks roll into Kuwait, shocking the world and kicking off Operation Desert Shield. The USS Saratoga is a weathered 34-year-old aircraft carrier that makes the sprint across the Atlantic Ocean and into the Red Sea, joining a coalition to halt Saddam Hussein and eventually push him out of Kuwait back into Iraq. The UN has set a deadline of January 15th, 1991. That deadline comes and goes, passes, and unleashes Operation Desert Storm, a relentless air and ground campaign designed to shatter Iraq's forces and push them out of Kuwait. Fox has joined the VFA-81 Sunliners. He's a Hornet pilot. The Hornet's a beast. It's an air-to-air and air-to-ground fighter, multi-role, capable of both dogfighting and delivering bombs on target. On this day, his aircraft will be loaded out with 2 AIM-9 Sidewinder heat-seeking missiles and 2 AIM-7 Sparrow radar-guided missiles. Additionally, his jet will be carrying 4 Mark 84 2,000-pound bombs. Fox braces for the unknown. He's a 35-year-old Texan that joined the Sunliners just recently as he transitioned to the F-18. This is supposed to be a gentlemanly cruise, Mediterranean cruise with multiple port calls where they'll get to visit potential family members, go shopping, enjoy Christmas markets, etc. However, Saddam Hussein and his invasion of Kuwait changed all that, and it forced the Navy, as well as the U.S. military and the coalition, to spend the winter planning on how to push Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait and back. Now, when Fox joined the Sunliner, he's a mid-level officer inside the fighter squadron. He falls into the operations role, but by the time he takes this role, the deadline has passed, the battle plans have been set, the lineups for who's flying in which strike package on which day have already been set for the initial couple volleys of this war. However, his friend, Lieutenant Commander Scott Spiker, really wants to get into the first strike, and Fox makes that happen. Unfortunately, Spiker launches on January 17th at 3 a.m. in the opening volley of Operation Desert Storm, and he is shot down. Fox later said this reassignment decision that he made was a heavy burden that he carried. And in his journal entry from January 17th, 1991, said, "The first strike from the Saratoga is complete, and Scott Spiker in 403 is the only guy who didn't return. No mayday call, no comm. I can only pray that he diverted, or in worst case, he ejected and now is being picked up." It was a grim reminder of how dangerous this job is and what potentially lay ahead. As dawn broke on January 17th, 1991, just hours after Operation Desert Storm had kicked off and the first strikes had been completed, Fox now finds himself sitting as a spare aircraft for a 36-plane strike package designed to go after the H-3 airfield, this key Iraqi stronghold, heavily fortified over in western Iraq. His job is to step in should someone fall out of the formation, requiring him to know the entire plan, everyone's job, everyone's desired points of impact. The plan is simple: smash the target, dodge surface-to-air missiles, defend against any air threats, and get home. But as we all know, war has its own plans and the enemy always gets a vote, and this day is no different. Chaos quickly erupts at the beginning of this second strike package as 3 Hornets fall out of the formation. One has a computer failure, one's fuel tanks fail to pressurize, and a third loses cockpit pressurization. As the strike package shrinks, it's also reformed, meaning members in the formation are moving to different position numbers. And why this is important? Because Fox, as he starts the formation, moves multiple positions, and everyone is shifting around. Ultimately, Fox is the only fighter aircraft that is looking low. The radar picture is busy, The E-2, the eye in the sky, is making numerous radio calls. They're conveying bogey radar hits to the F-18s via bullseye calls. Now, bullseye is a geographical reference point. This is a point on the ground, a latitude, a longitude, that everyone knows where it exists. In this case, the call sign of that bullseye cut is Manny. So the E-2 might make a radio call to Fox's formation such as single contact Manny 360-15-20,000, meaning that there is a contact north 360 degrees of Manny 15 miles at 20,000 feet. This allows the fighters to correlate that radio call with a radar hit inside their aircraft. Now, at the time, the F-18 required a lot of switch changes to actually have the bullseye representation on the radar picture. Nowadays, when the radar cursor moves, if the proper bullseye information is placed inside the jet, the pilot can quickly correlate that bullseye call to the radar contact. Really busy, Fox realizes a lot of radio calls, and he just goes, you know what? I'm going to focus on being a good wingman. I'm going to stay visual, I'm going to stay quiet, and I'm going to do my job, which in this case is striking the H-3 airfield. Suddenly, the E-2 makes one radio call that gets Mert's attention, and that's 400 bandits on your nose.
400 bandits on your nose.
400's their formation call sign. That bandit call, meaning there's a bad guy and he's only 15 miles off your nose, and they're going head-to-head with a MiG-21. This gets Fox's heart racing as he shifts from an air-to-ground mindset to an air-to-air mindset and starts looking outside and on his radar. Picks up a speck in his HUD and unleashes the AIM-9 Sidewinder at the contact. Fox recalls it was impossible to see that missile once it came off the rail. However, when it came off the rail, he could almost read the serial number because of the temporal distortion and how time slowed down.
Time compression, I felt like I could have looked over there and seen the serial number on the missile.
But once it left, there was no smoke. The new motors inside the rockets were smokeless, making it very difficult to track that supersonic missile going to the target. There was no confirmation. He was wondering, did I miss? So he quickly switches over to the AIM-7 and takes a 4.2-mile Sparrow shot, right as he sees this MiG-21 off his nose erupt in a fireball. Fox's jet is pointing right at this burning MiG-21 as it goes tumbling out of the sky, and he passes 1,000 feet over it. He rolls up to look out and see the burning wreckage and sees that the front of the MiG-21 is still intact and the pilot did not get out. As he's watching this unfold beside him, here's a splash one over the radio. This is Bongo, who's calling out a second kill as Merc looks to his left and sees a fireball erupt there. His first realization that there were actually two enemy aircraft off their nose. Right after this, a cool, calm, and collected bouncer makes a splash 2 radio call, which forces Mert to think, did Bouncer's missile actually take out that MiG off his nose, wondering if his kill had been stolen? But there's no time to focus on this because there might be more enemy contacts out there, and they have to bomb the H-3 airfield. Mert quickly starts shifting focus back to the air-to-ground mindset, but picks up another bogey contact. This one's a little strange. They don't know what type of aircraft it is, but at 23,000 feet and 200 knots, there is a fighter aircraft that is near the H-3 airfield, near their target. He locks into it and begins running it down. He needs to get that VID, the visual identification. Now, intelligence reports would later indicate that this was a MiG-29, but he didn't know that at the time. But he's beginning to think this is a fighter aircraft, high to medium altitude and really slow. Tactical fighter speeds would typically be somewhere between 400 and 450 knots at this point, so 200 knots is incredibly slow. Not where you want to be. He immediately starts checking his six, thinking this might be an ambush tactic, either for SAMs or other MiG-29s that might be drawing his Hornet formation into an ambush. He's got this bogey as he's trying to get the visual identification locked in, and he's chasing him down. Now his F-18 is still laden with 4 2,000-pound Mark 84 bombs, not really your air-to-air fighter that you want to be. His primary mission, bomb that H-3 airfield. As he's running this MiG-29 down, trying to get that visual identification, he catches out the corner of his eye at 2 o'clock, H-3 airfield, and makes the decision to break lock and go after his primary target, which is bombing this H-3 airfield. Now his primary target on the airfield is a bunker, and it's very difficult to pick out the tan on tan desert bunker in the desert, but he sees a white roof hangar. That's his secondary target. Lines up, and as he describes, delivers the sweetest dive bombing attack of his entire career. Getting low on fuel, it's time to head back. They've successfully downed 2 enemy MiG-21s and bombed the H-3 airfield. But it's not over if you're a naval aviator, because you got to land the thing back on the boat. Mert recalled the time an F-14 pilot in Libya had an aerial victory but had a bolter, meaning came back, touched down, and didn't catch a wire on the boat and had to take back off and do it again. Not what you want, not the creme de la creme or the icing on the cake when it comes to finishing such a harrowing missions. So he's thinking about getting back on the deck of the Saratoga. Landing's not guaranteed, but Fox hits the deck, grabs an OK3 wire, textbook landing, and is able to celebrate their victory. Now, I envision this a lot like Top Gun with Maverick and Iceman, with everyone cheering around it, and don't shatter my dream if that's not the case. But they have to go into the debrief, and Fox describes this much like a championship victory inside the locker room where everyone's happy. But remember, Mert did take 2 missile shots, and his skipper, Captain Joe Mobley, gave him a little jab with, "Hey, why'd you shoot a Sparrow into a burning MiG? Remember, that Sparrow was that second missile shot." Fox could only grin and say, "I wanted to be sure, skipper." Now, Fox's MiG-21 kill will be the first F-18 aerial victory in U.S. history. He topped it off with a perfect bombing run and didn't have to bolter, so an all-around win. Fox would go on to fly 18 combat missions in Desert Storm and later lead and fly numerous combat missions in Iraqi freedom. Ultimately, Fox would retire as a Vice Admiral, having worked at the White House, onboarded the F-18 Super Hornet, that follow-on to the original Hornet. His story is one of skill, courage, grit, and dealing with the fog of war. If you want to hear Admiral Fox's story, we did 2 podcast interviews with him on the Afterburn podcast, so you can check those out. Those will be linked down below. If you want more content like that, make sure you subscribe to the Afterburn podcast. We'll see you next time.